and welcome to episode 30 of Little Big Knits. This is a podcast about knitting primarily, and my name is Selma. I'm your host. I'm also known as selmaknits on Instagram and Ravelry. I'm coming to you from here in Ottawa, Canada, where I live with my husband, our 2 kids, and our cat Yoda, who occasionally makes her presence known. We'll see what happens today. We have a Ravelry group called Little Big Knits where you can find our knit-alongs and a welcome thread and other conversation going on in there, so please feel free to come in there. You'll also find the show notes there, and if you have any questions for me at any time, you can come and write them in there or in the comments down below here on YouTube. Thank you for joining me today. We are just about at 6,000 subscribers, so wow. Thank you for subscribing, for watching me weekly. If you're new, thank you for giving it a try. It's nice to have you here, and you're all welcome. Today I am drinking a big latte in this mug that my friend Lori, who is also known as Intuit Knit, she also has a podcast. She gave this mug to me when she came and visited in August. She came for the Twist Fibre Festival. You saw footage at the beginning of the episode from that festival, just a little bit that I took here and there. And she brought me this mug, which is made by a potter at Camp Hill, which is an organization that works with people of different abilities, shall we say. And this is the second mug that Lori has given me from there, and I always really enjoy using them. I've actually gotten a lot of new mugs lately, lovely gifts, so I'm going to try and bring them on each episode to show you. The next one will be quite exciting when it will be really fall. We're in September. Fall has started a little earlier than usual this year, I would say, or what feels earlier than usual because we've had some pretty hot Septembers, but it's been really quite lovely. But I'm still able to wear some summer clothing, and I don't know, I know there's supposed to be a rule about only wearing white until September, and I'm saying it's until October, so I'm still wearing white a little bit here and there when the weather permits. Today we've got, I haven't been around for a while, have I? It's been about 2 months since the last time I podcasted, and really that was just because life in the summer was so full. There was so much going on. Our weekends were full. We did lots of swimming, we went to Montreal a couple of different times, and I don't know, we rented a cottage at one point, we went camping, and it just seemed like there was so much going on. I've also been extremely busy at work and have kind of needed the weekends to recuperate, so it's been difficult to find time to podcast. And as a result of not having podcasted in pretty much 2 months, I believe, I feel like I've got some substantial finished objects. So I'll be sharing those with you today. Before we get into that, let me just tell you that we've got the Garment Galore Cal, which I'm co-hosting with Kate of the Hawthorn Cottage Craft podcast. And that is coming up into its September years, shall we say, or its September months. We're coming close to the end. It will be wrapping up on December 31st. It's been a year long and knit along. Feel free to join us if you want to join in still and add in a sweater. Go into my group, Little Big Knits, and Kate of Hawthorn Cottage Crafts little big group as well on Ravelry. Sorry, I was going to say Hawthorn Cottage Craft Little Big Knits group. Anyway, we have our separate groups, so you can see the different finished object threads. We've also got conversation threads, and there's been a lot of activity and a lot of amazing projects. So there's still just under, well, a little over 3 months actually before the Cal ends, and crochet is also accepted, just so you know. And as I said, we've got different threads. It's been really fun hosting this, and I will eventually do a separate episode, so to speak, or a little special edition with the prizes. I've been gathering prizes all year. We've gotten some lovely ones from donations, as well as things that I have purchased along the way for the Cal. So yeah, so let's start with finished objects. I'll tell you a little bit about what's on the needles as well. Some of the acquisitions I've gotten over the last couple of months. Really, I've only gotten yarn at the Twist Fibre Festival. So I've got all of that nicely gathered here. And then I thought I'd share some of the reading that I've been doing, because I've done a lot of reading in the last couple of months, or audio reading. I'm not sure if you call that reading, but it feels like it's reading. I feel like I get a lot out of it and I really enjoy it. So I thought I'd share some of the reads that I've done this summer. So here we go. So as usual, I usually start with what I'm wearing. And before I do that, you know me, I'm always interjecting here with things that I remember along the way. Thank you so much for all the comments from the last episode, and the so-called vintage knit that my mother had made, a sweater that I was wearing that my mother had made in the 90s. I'm really enjoying that sweater, although its season is coming to an end soon. I probably won't wear it again this season, but it's been a lovely, lovely knit. And I hope to share some other vintagey knits that I have along the way. And I'm also thinking about having some interviews with some local knitters, so you might see a little bit of that in the future of this podcast. So anyway, let's move on to finished objects. So I'm wearing the CALYX, and this was one that was almost finished in the last episode. I believe I was on the first or the second sleeve. I had not done the yoke, the neck of the sweater yet. I finished it not long after the last podcast, and I really, really enjoyed it. So this is the CALYX by Elizabeth Doherty, also known as Blue Bee Studios. And I knit this out of Katia cotton linen yarn, which is it's a really lovely, lovely feeling yarn. I really like it, and I hope that it lasts. We'll have to see. I'm noticing some tiny bit of pilling here, which I was not expecting because it felt like such a crisp yarn. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. I don't think it's a discontinued yarn, but it doesn't seem like it's that easy to find anymore. One thing I'll say, that with the cotton linen type yarns, you notice everything. So I have to say that the finishing doesn't feel, the finishing or the, you notice every little thing. So it sometimes feels like it's not as smooth looking, but I'm quite okay with that. I mentioned to you last time that there was some nice I-cord details along the edges, that it was a bottom-up structure. There was some short row shaping here, and you attached, no, there was no short row shaping. Was there? I don't think so. But you attached the lace on, and then you started the sleeves. So there were some really interesting techniques, and the technique that I was going to be doing was this Latvian braid that goes all around. That was so much fun. I really, really love that technique, and from there you picked up the stitches. Well, the stitches were created with the Latvian braid to do this final ribbing. I was a little concerned about the opening of the neck lining, but it's actually quite all right, and it tends to sit fine. I'm not a big fan of having my bra strap showing, but it tends to sit pretty nicely, and I've worn it quite a bit. Now, I think somebody commented at one point about the see-throughness or the transparency of the lace. I would say that there's a little bit of that, but it's not too bad. But it's a nice length. It's not very long, so I find that it's a nice sweater to wear to work with skirts or dress pants, and so I've been getting some wear out of this. And yeah, I really, really, really liked this pattern. I would make it again, to be honest, although I don't have any plans to, but it would definitely be a repeat. As I said in the last episode, I believe Elizabeth Doherty has amazing little tutorials on how to do things like the Latvian braid and the I-cord finishing, and her patterns are very, very well written. So this was great. I really enjoyed it. I also cast on and finished, since the last podcast, another pattern of hers, actually. I had mentioned it to you before. It's called the FARALLON, and it's one of her more recent patterns. It's a cardigan, and it is also a drop sleeve type of cardigan. It's also got a Latvian braid on the side. So some of the techniques were the same in this sweater. It just has, you start with the back and you do the Latvian braid, and then you go on the front and you add on this kind of, what do you call that, mistake rib type of stitch along the side. I'll insert a picture here of me wearing it. You might see me wearing it at a future time, but I won't do a wardrobe change today. This was also a wonderful, wonderful pattern. I just wanted to have, you know, a good basic cardigan for the summer that falls nicely, that's easy to wear, and I finished it about 2 weeks ago, I think, and I have to say I've worn it multiple times since then. I really, really like it. And so it's going to be the year of the gray cardigan, I think. I have plans for finishing the Evening Dew, which I'll share with you later, and there could be another gray cardigan as well. And I do wonder, how many gray cardigans does a girl need? I'm gonna say many. How about that? So anyway, this is, as I said, another pattern by Elizabeth Doherty, just an open front cardigan. Really, really nice. It's got some lovely details. What I really like is the edging here on the side. It's got an interesting rib here that's also kind of a mock rib, and then it's got this detail on the side. So it's a split hem, but there's a little bit of a upside down V aspect to it. It was just a real delight to knit this. Again, well written. I didn't read the instructions very well for the short row shaping at the where the sleeve joins. There's just a little bit, not a huge amount, but just enough to add some fabric here, like about that much worth. And I think the instructions were fine. I just seemed to be having a hard time with them, and so I ended up doing my own thing, but and it all worked out fine. I was just having one of those, I think I was just somehow not getting it. I was just out to lunch somewhere. So I did my own thing and it worked out fine, but when I reread her instructions after, I thought there's nothing wrong with her instructions. It was me. So anyway, this is another sweater that I finished this summer using also Katia linen, which is a cotton linen blend. It's the same yarn as this one, but as you can see, this was kind of an oatmeal color and this was kind of a gray color. This has a beautiful heatheriness to it. Let's see if you can see that in the stitches. There's a bit, the linen, the natural linen color comes through, and then the cotton is clearly gray. So it ends up giving it quite an earthy color to it, and I really, really like it a lot. Apart from the modification I did on the short row shaping in the sleeves, there were some accidental modifications. This was supposed to have a slip stitch down the middle of the back, and I was already down the back when I realized that I was supposed to have added that in, so that didn't get added in. And I think that there was, I did do the sort of mock seam slip stitch detail on the side, and I was supposed to do it down the arm, and again I was partway down the arm when I realized it, and so I didn't bother going back because I didn't think it was going to make a big difference. But really nice details. Like, I really like this detail here. I don't know if you can see it. let me try and do this. So it's a dolman sleeve, but there's a little bit of decreasing happening here so that the sleeve goes in a little bit, and I really like that detail. I like the short row, or not the short row, well, the short row details as well, and the slip stitch detail. I love the Latvian braid. I would knit another one of her sweaters like right now, but I feel like I should probably move on to some other things that I wanted to make. But I really, really enjoy Elizabeth Doherty's patterns for sure. Somebody actually gave me one, which I'm going to put at the end of the episode. At the end of the episode, I think I'm going to do a slideshow of all the patterns that have come into my life in the last few months, because I haven't been sharing them with you. Some of them have been gifts, many I have bought, and I'm going to put them on at the end. But there was another one of hers, I can't remember what it's called right now, but you'll see it at the end if you stay that long. And it's meant to be a summer top, and I think I'm gonna try and make that next summer. So that is some of the summer makes that I've made. These two I'm still gonna be wearing probably for another couple of weeks, and then the weather's probably gonna get too cold for me to be able to wear these. I was very happy to use up my cotton linen yarn, that cottage yarn, because I've had that in my stash for 2 or 3 years, and I've been eyeing it, so I'm so glad to have used it up this summer. I have some left, probably about 2 balls in each color, in the oatmeal and the gray, and I'm thinking about turning it into tea towels, probably, because I think it would be really, really nice. I've been using woven linen towels in the bathrooms, in my upstairs and our downstairs bathroom, and I really like them, so I thought I might knit something that I could also use in the bathroom as a hand towel. So I have one last finished object. I believe last episode I showed you the Georgia socks by TRACIE MILLAR. I had finished them, they came out too big. I ended up giving them to a friend's daughter who has large feet, and so that was awesome. And so I immediately cast on a second pair for myself. And I remember, if you were here last time, you recall I was telling you that this yarn that I had striped with this yarn had striping, but you didn't see it when it was striped with the other yarn. So I decided to make a pair with just that pink yarn, and I'll put here what the yarns are because I have no recollection anymore. And so now you could really see the subtle striping, and this time I got the sizing perfect, and I've worn these a couple of times. We went camping, as I said. I brought them and wore them camping, and I also wore them out for a walk the other night. The weather's cooling down, so the wool socks are starting to come out. And because it's still not very cool, the fact that they're shorties has been great. I really enjoyed this pattern, and this second pair was super duper fast to whip up. I did exactly as I was supposed to. I did the cut-in heel, which I really enjoyed. They're the shorties, and I did the same toe as usual, and they just turned out really, really well. And once again, I'm being a decent podcaster and showing them to you on these wonderful blockers by Patricia of Knitography. I just love these, they're so beautiful. So there you go, a second pair of Georgia socks. And again, I'll put the information about the yarn in the down bar as well as in the show notes on Ravelry, in case you're interested. This has some cashmere in it. And this is my first time using cashmere sock yarn, so I'll be curious to see how it compares to just a superwash yarn. I've sort of determined that last winter I noticed that the superwash sock yarns aren't that warm. I mean, they're warm, but when we have -20 weather and I'm outside walking to the bus stop or wherever I'm walking and I've got good boots, that they're not as warm as I need them to be. So I've decided that this year or in the next coming time, whenever I do knit a pair of socks for myself, that I'm going to try and use fibers that I haven't used before, fibers that tend to be quite warm. So those have got cashmere. I'm hoping to make some socks with some non-superwash yarn. I'm also hoping to use a mohair non-superwash yarn, and I have some alpaca sock yarn as well. So I'd like to try different fibers to see how warm they are and how well they do their job here in the winter, because we do have a very serious winter here. So, you know, I just find that the fingering weight superwash is not great. I like the weight of the socks. They're just not that warm. And then if I realize that it's the fingering weight that's an issue, then I might try some heavier weight sock yarn at some point and see what happens. So that is pretty much my finished objects. So let's move on to works in progress, because really I only have one. And it's in this stunning bag that my friend Amelia made. She has opened an Etsy shop called milassweetmakes, and I'll reference it down here as well as in the show notes. And she's just got really nice fabrics and really nicely made project bags. And this one came with a progress keeper that I used actually when I was knitting of a bicycle. And because I tend to like riding my bicycle, I decided to buy the bicycle bag that she had, although there were many that I was struggling not to buy as well. So it's been a wonderful bag to have my current project in. So what is Selma working on? Well, Selma's actually finished, but I have some concerns about this. So I am using a yarn, which is the Fibre Company. This is the yarn that I'm using. You can see that it's got a rustic quality to it. This is the Fibre Company MEADOW in the Bergamot colorway. And this is a yarn that has is 40% wool, 25 baby llama, 20% silk, and 15% linen. I got this at Espace Tricot last year, and when I went, that's the only time I've been to the store. And I have been working on the EDIE by Isabelle KRAEMER. And the EDIE is a really nice, simple, top-down sweater with just a very simple sort of linen stitch detail that stripes the sweater. She made this sweater in linen. I did not use 100% linen. I can't remember what she used exactly in the original one. It was Quince & Company Sparrow. And linen has a tendency to kind of go on a bias a bit when you're knitting with it. In fact, I've noticed it with the sleeves of this sweater. I don't know if you can see that there's a bias. It really should be more like that. There's a bias that tends to happen with linen. So my understanding, although I'm not 100%, I'm not sure if I'm 100% right, is that she created these linen stitch sections to stop the bias from happening. If she didn't do it, it was a very smart thing to do because it does actually accomplish that. But when you're using wool or linen combined with an animal type fiber like wool or alpaca or something, you don't really need that. So I've actually finished the knitting on this. I made it in this red color, which I really like. I finished everything, but I'm having some serious concerns about the rolling. So I haven't had a chance yet. I'm going to wet block it. It's finished not with a rib, but just with a row of purl and then binding off. And there's a nice little detail here at the bottom where it creates this kind of, like on the FARALLON cardigan, a bit of a V split hem using short rows. But at this point it's rolling so much. So I'm curious to see if I wet it, what will happen. The same thing happened here in the arms. So I'm a little bit upset about that. If it turns out that there's nothing I can do, that it won't relax once I've wet it and perhaps steam blocked it, then I might have to redo the hem and perhaps do some sort of a ribbing instead or something like that. And I would do the same thing, just do a short little ribbing here because I'm just not able to get it to stop rolling. Otherwise, I've really enjoyed knitting the sweater. It was really easy. It used about 1.5 skeins of this yarn. This has quite a lot of meters to it. It's 545 yards, so it's got, it's a light fingering yarn. And so, I used probably about, close to 800 yards to make this sweater, maybe 700 and something. So it didn't use a whole lot. You could definitely make it with 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn. I've really enjoyed knitting it. I've really enjoyed the yarn. I just have to figure out what to do here. If you have made this sweater in something other than linen, let me know if you had this problem and what you did. I'd be very curious to know. I decided there's an optional finishing for the V. You can not finish it at all, or you could pick up stitches, add a row of purls, and then bind off, which I did do. And that is sitting very nicely. There's a little bit of rolling on the back of the neck, but it sits just about right when it's actually on, but the bottom is a bit of a problem. So let's see what I end up doing. I'll end up showing it to you next time when it's actually finished. And I didn't make it as long as the pattern calls for because I wanted to be a little bit more of a t-shirt that I might wear under a jacket or something like that. You'll recall that I said when it's really hot here, wearing wool is just not feasible. So I thought this would be a nice in-between season kind of top that I could wear under a cardigan or a jacket. It would probably look quite good under the FARALLON even, but I haven't tried it yet. So more to come on that and what I end up doing as a solution for this. But I do hope to finish it off so that I can wear it over the next few weeks, because I should be able to wear that with a cardigan or something like that. So that's actually it in terms of what I've been working on. What's next? Well, I need to finish another gray cardigan. So you may recall in this bag by Buku, which I just love. I really love her work. It's just amazing. It's thick and intense, and she screen prints. They're well-made bags. So in here is the Evening Dew that, if you've been watching a while, you may recall I have been working on this, and then I put it down for the summer because I knew that there was no point working on it over the summer. So I'm going to be, now when I'm finishing the EDIE off, I'll be picking this back up and finishing the body. Now, who was this by? I do not recall. The only thing I recall is that it is a Japanese name, so I'll put that on the bottom here. I cannot remember who had designed this right off the bat, and I don't have the pattern printed. But it's called the Evening Dew, and I just really, really love this, so I can't wait for it to be finished. I'm knitting it out of alpaca that came from Persimmon Tree Farms that I'd gotten at Rhinebeck, and I have one other large skein of this, which should be enough for the cardigan. And I hope to finish this off. So far, there's not a whole lot to say. I think since the last time I podcasted, I've probably knit about 1 centimeter on it. But this is going to be coming back into active knitting mode, and I'll be finishing that hopefully over the next couple of weeks. I have also been swatching. In June, I ended up buying some yarn from AMERICO, their baby suri in this crazy orange colorway. I can wear that, right? It'll be a cardigan, not a sweater. I bought it to make a cardigan, and this was on 50% off at that time. And I've wanted to make a sweater out of her baby suri for such a long time. So I've been swatching, just a stockinette swatch on 4mm needles. It's a sport weight yarn, just to see how I like that. The pattern that came with it is this pattern called SITTAKANAY or SITTAKANAY RUANA. So it's this kind of cardigan. Can you see that? That is using a mock rib stitch all around. It's made in one piece, although you end up sewing, you go sort of up the back and around the front, and you end up sewing the sides with the sleeves built in. I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to make this at this point. I'm also considering some other options. Like I was thinking of making the FARALLON, again, using this orange yarn. But now I'm starting to move towards knitting this again, but I was really doubting if I would make this or not. The model who is in here, and there are not, one of the reasons is there are not very many finished projects of this pattern, and nobody's wearing it in their pictures. So I can't tell how it sits on different body types. The person who is modeling it here is very slender, and so it sits like it drops quite nicely and drapes quite nicely off of her. But I'm a little bit, I'm wondering if with my more, you know, chunky or more filled in nature, how it would sit on me. But I'm actually thinking that I might just go for it. We'll see. And the thing is that it's the kind of sweater where you can't really tell until the end how it's really going to look. But I think what I'll do is swatch. After I've done some more stockinette on this, I think I will try it with the mistake rib and see how I feel about it. But I do want just an open cardigan, even not a cardigan, but just a layering piece to wear over blouses in the fall, maybe winter. But it really is, you know, it's the pumpkin season almost, and so this is the right thing to make. So after I finish the Evening Dew, I am planning on casting this on. and most likely as the SITTAKANAY RUANA by AMERICO. I have so many things that I want to knit. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I decided on this one, because I was really struggling to decide on what to knit this fall, and so many ideas going through my head that it was actually causing me a slight amount of angst. And I thought, okay, why don't I do a lottery system here since I can't seem to decide myself. And I wrote down the names of cardigans or names of yarns if they haven't been assigned on little pieces of paper, and I put them in an envelope that is at the back of my notebook. And I just put them there, and I thought, when I'm ready to start really thinking about the next project, I'll pick out 3 and then choose from those 3. So I did that, and that yarn, that RUANA, was in the first 3 that I picked. And that was already about 3 weeks ago. And then I realized I'm nowhere near even getting close to that project. So I thought, well, maybe I should pick another 3 as I get closer. And so I ended up picking another 3 the other day, and the RUANA was once again in those 3. And I thought, well, isn't that funny? And then I thought, oh, let me do it one more time. And the RUANA was again in that batch of 3, and I thought, okay, well, clearly I need to make the RUANA. So that's it. I'm just going to be using that yarn, and I will be very happy to be using the AMERICO yarn because it is beautiful. It's got an absolutely stunning feel to it. It is, I believe, 50 alpaca and 50 merino, 50 baby Surrey alpaca and 50 merino. So that's what you're likely to see in a next episode. So, Twist Fibre Festival was a festival that I went to in August. I went with my friend Lori and another friend Rachel, and that's when Lori brought me this wonderful mug. It is a fibre festival that happens in Saint-André-d'Albalain, which is about an hour from Ottawa on the Quebec side in the Quebec province. I think it's been going on for about 5 years now, and it's really a great festival. It's quite large. In terms of being a Canadian festival. I think they say that it's the largest festival in Canada. I don't know, but it is a really good size, and we had a great time going there and shopping, and everything I got is in this bag that I bought there with all these mischievous cats and this girl knitting. Actually, that looks like what Yoda would look like beside me. She'd have this kind of look on her face. So I got this from Dolphina, who had a wonderful, wonderful array of bags, but I just was instantly drawn to this one. And in here is essentially everything that I bought at the festival. I bought a skein of yarn by Donna, who is Roots and Rain. Roots and Rain yarn. She's actually a local dyer here in Ottawa, and I've never actually bought from her here in town, but on my list of things to buy was a nice pale pink, and she just had a perfect pale pink. This is going to be going into a shawl. I've been looking at different shawls where I want to make. There are a couple of different ones that I've been hoping to make, and so this is going to be paired with probably grays or beigey browns in a shawl at some point in the future. Her stall was wonderful, and you saw some of that in the beginning footage. I also bought a sweaters quantity of this yarn by RETROSARIA or Rosa Pomar, the MUNGO base. And the MUNGO base is 50 wool and 50 cotton. It's a recycled wool and cotton yarn. In fact, it's entirely spun from pre-consumer waste generated by Portuguese spinning mills. So that's wonderful, and it's all from Portugal or Spain. And I'm going to be using this probably in the spring to make the Rift sweater by Jacqueline Cieslak. I really, really like that sweater. It's her most recent design, And I kept swatching. I may have mentioned this in the last podcast. Kept swatching with stuff, hoping to figure it out, and I just couldn't with the linen that I had. And so when I saw that Farm to Cables Dale was going to be at Twist and that she had this yarn and this was going to be perfect for the Rift, I actually ordered it online and picked it up at Twist and had a nice chat with Dale. She really has a lovely, lovely selection of yarns, so feel free to check her out online. And she also goes to quite a few of the festivals in the area. So anyway, this will become a Rift sometime in the near future. The other yarn that I bought was from Dover Farms. It's this wonderful yarn. It is 100% Gotland. I've got fibers going up my nose. And her yarns, Dover Farm yarns, every time I see her at a festival, I spend 15 minutes there. And I have bought one skein in the past that I still haven't used, which was also Gotland, but in the cream color. And I decided to buy this to go with some natural colored Shetland yarn that I have to make the ingles. I think that's what I'm going to make with it. Or that's what I was thinking anyway. We'll see if that is what ends up happening, but it is going to be with the natural Shetland yarn in some sort of a color work sweater. The Gotland just has such an incredible feel. I used some Gotland yarn in my brown skirt that I made the winter before last, or was it last winter? I can't even remember. You may recall if you've been around. And I double stranded it with some hemp wool and the Gotland. And it's got a very rustic feel, not particularly soft per se, not horribly rough or anything, but quite a hairy yarn. I just love the feel of it though. So I'm really looking forward to having this as color work. I think it'll give a beautiful sort of halo to it. So I got that. I was really struggling not to buy one of her sheep skins. She had amazing sheep skins. They were so beautiful, but I realized that if I was going to buy a sheepskin, I was probably buying it for Yoda more than anybody else because she was just going to be all over it. So I decided not to, but it was really beautiful, really, really beautiful. And I was just going to say about her Dover Farms, I think she may be scaling back for a little while in terms of the yarns, but I really love the yarns that she has. And then from Les Belles Bouclettes, it's called Les Belles Bouclettes, from their Angora goats and spun in Van Cleek Hill, or spun in Canada, but the farm is in Van Cleek Hill. I bought this mohair yarn. This is actually a 70 kid mohair, 20 wool, and 10 silk. Another red. When I go for reds, I tend to go for these sort of deeper, almost burgundy reds. And this I bought actually to double strand with some mohair in a very, very similar type of red that I have upstairs in my closet. Because I had been looking for something, and when I saw this, I was just instantly drawn to it, and I thought that is perfect. So each skein has 479 yards, so there's 900, so it'll definitely be enough when stranded with the mohair to make either a sweater or a cardigan. I haven't quite decided yet, so we'll see what ends up happening with that. And the last thing I bought on a whim, but I'm so excited about, is this fluff. Look at this fluff. Does that look like angel hair in a skein or what? This yarn is from Poppy's Pompom. She is a local yarn maker from Aylmer, which is just across the bridge on the Quebec side. And this yarn comes from her dog, Poppy. It is Samoyed yarn mixed with merino. So she says she has 3 Samoyed dogs, and Samoyed dogs shed all year long, and so she saves their combed fur and has it milled with 20% or 75% samoyed and 25% merino to give it, I think, a little bit more structure. And also the samoyed is extremely warm, like it really is, it's wonderful. So I bought this to make a hat. I bought it, quite frankly, on a whim, because I got to the booth and I was just instantly drawn to it, and I was like, what is this? I assumed that it was Angora, and it turned out that it was dog, which I have to say I had a bit of a funny reaction to, and I said, how do you deal with the dogs? And she said, oh, these are my pets, and we just comb them. So she doesn't have a huge amount of yarn, but it is absolutely stunning. Most of it is in the natural white of the Samoyed dog, which is that guy right there. And she had some that was naturally dyed. So I bought this thinking I'm going to make a hat, and then I realized as soon as I brought it home, Isla's going to love this. She's going to fall in love with this. So I'll make a hat and we'll see who it ends up going to. If she insists on wearing it, I might have to get another skein of this. But I really enjoyed talking to the woman at the booth as well. I do not recall her name off the top of my head. It was just really fascinating, and it's got such an amazing feel. It's not scratchy in the way that mohair can be for some people. I think that this would be a softer fiber to wear. It's kind of has a feeling of slightly more substance than Angora, for example. So that was the last skein of yarn that I bought at the festival. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. They had a different section this year when you first got in of kind of, I think they called it, I can't remember exactly what they called it, but it was sort of an up and coming. So maybe they weren't really, they were established, but not necessarily as established as people who've been going to the festival and vending at the festival for a few years. But there were some great yarn dyers, and the felter who made those amazing animals you may have noticed in the opening scenes. The felted animals this woman made were like ridiculously beautiful and amazing. And it was really fun to go through there. And so that was a nice new addition to the festival, as well as the stuff, you know, all the beautiful vendors on the inside. And I really enjoyed it this year. It was really a very fun experience. It was really fun going with Lori and Rachel as well. So that pretty much brings the knitting content to an end. Oh, no, sorry, I had one more thing I wanted to show you. This was a wonderful gift from Lee Christensen, who's also known as Luli. She has her shop online called Luli, and she makes these wonderful, this one is, here is her card. She also has a podcast, which I thoroughly enjoy and watch every single time. And she makes knitting needle cases, as well as these wonderful pouches that open up like this. I haven't actually started using it yet because I wanted to show you. So she sent two, one which I have kept, and the other which will become a prize for the Garment Galore Cal. So you can look forward to seeing that in the prize episode when it's aired. And she has just really lovely fabrics. So thank you so much, Lee. I'm just so excited. I'm going to start using this now that I've shown it to you. It's got a lovely denim on the outside and very nice snaps that are used. Her things are so clearly well made, and I love watching her podcast because she just describes sewing so well. I'd like to sit with you, Lee, and sew one day. I'm such a beginner and get so nervous about everything. So anyway, there you go. That is pretty much, that now definitely wraps up the knitting content of the podcast. I don't even know what to tell you about the summer. It was just so much fun. Lots of knitting time with friends as well, getting together with various knitters, local people, and I think there was a trunk show at one point at Wabi Sabi, and it was great to bump into people, and there was lots of family time, and it was just a really, really, really lovely summer, I have to say. We didn't do anything supremely exciting, but everything was just lovely, and it was just nice to enjoy what we did. Lots of good times. So this was a lovely summer. As I mentioned earlier, I also did an awful lot of reading this summer. And I think the last time I podcasted, I was in the middle of reading ELEANOR OLIPHANT by Gail Honeyman, and I ended up finishing that, and I really enjoyed that book. I mean, I think it was really well written. I really began to adore the awkward characters in that book, and long after finishing the book, I was still thinking about them and kind of missing them. Like, they became a really nice presence as I walked to work and listened to the book. It was a really good story. I do think that it's a story that as you go along, you know that there's a certain kind of trauma that has occurred. And I think the treatment of that was a little bit simplistic. I don't think we get over our traumas quite so easily. I don't know that we get over our little things that happen quite so easily sometimes in our lives, right? So I felt that was a little bit simplistic. However, I still really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the way it was written, and the main characters were just lovely, and it was just a lovely, lovely book. I'd recommend it. After that, I read Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, and then I watched the movie. Gotta be honest, I didn't love that book. It was a well put together story, and I know it was hugely popular. I just found it ugly. I found the descriptions ugly, and I know they had to be because of the characters. I found the characters ugly. And I don't know that I believed everything that happened with them. I mean, one of them is kind of a sociopath, so you don't really believe a sociopath most of the time, but the other person who wasn't, supposedly, I don't know, there was something about it. The story was told in a way that I was compelled to continue reading, but when it was over, I didn't want to wear it anymore. You know, I kind of like wanted to be done with it. I decided to watch the movie, and it was okay. But I realized after reading that book that I had read Something in the Water, I had read Rebecca, and then I read that. And in all of those movies, wives are killed. In all of those books, I should say, wives are killed. And I thought, I don't want to read another book about wives being killed. So I've been very picky about that, actually. I looked at Alejandro one day, I was like, you're not going to kill me, are you? So I thought, that's enough of that kind of book for now. I think I'll move on to something different. And so after that, I ended up reading Homegoing by Ya Jezi. This is a book that was very powerful. And I'm not going to say a huge amount about it because, to be quite honest, I actually, it's a book that touched me very deeply and very in the core, and I find it actually quite hard to talk about it without getting teary-eyed. It's a story that takes place in the 1700s. About two half-sisters. They don't know that each other exists. And one is married in Ghana, in what is now Ghana. At the time it was Fontyland. One is in Ashantiland. One is married off to a British white man who is in the slave trade, and the other one is enslaved and sent to America. And then it's about the generations of after that in Africa as well as in North America. 9 generations, I believe, and they're all sort of clips of something from each generation. But it really, to me, it was an extremely powerful book because I felt like it showed the full impact of something like what happened in Africa and how awful it was. The implication of all the people involved back then, as well as just the repercussions and the impact of displacement and the fragmented history that displacement creates. And I think on a certain level that's really universal. I mean, on the one hand, I felt like it displayed really powerfully the impact of that whole slave trade movement. But I felt like there was a universal message, in a sense, of displacement and fragmentation. I have felt in my life as an immigrant here in Canada, having been born in Finland and brought here away from my Finnish roots and my Turkish roots, there's a part of me that has felt displaced. And I thought, you know, at some point in our lives, many of us, if not most of us, feel displaced. We move to a new place, our families fall apart, or, you know, and it could be something that we ourselves do, or it could be something that happens to us. But I felt like I could really relate to that sense of displacement that I have felt in my own life. So it really spoke to me very, very, very powerfully, I have to say. And the fragmented history over time, right? That when we are displaced, we move away and we have less and less of a sense of our history and less and less of a sense of who we come from sometimes, unless there's a tradition of really keeping all that information. So I thought it was extremely well written. I thought it was a powerful, powerful first novel. And I might listen to it again. It was very well told, very well read on Audible. Actually, I read it through the library. They have a new app that you can listen to books on. But I thought it was really, really fabulous. So I look forward to other work that she will put out in the future. I've found myself watching interviews with her and really being wanting to know more about the layers in that book. The one thing about it, I have to say, as I said, they were all sort of vignettes, and the characters were rich, and so I didn't want the vignettes to end. And that at times was a little bit frustrating. And then they might be referred to by a future generation. And so then you'd hear about them again. But because there are so many vignettes, you sometimes are like, okay, who was this again? But I still felt that it was really powerful, even when you stepped back and sort of looked at it from farther away. I just thought it was an extremely good book. I'd almost, from my perspective, for me and what it gave to me, I'd almost call it a masterpiece. That book was given to me by my friend Dana, and it was her favorite book of last year. And yeah, I just thought it was great. And after that, despite it being an absolutely great book, I was, as I said, extremely busy at work. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I just felt like after reading a book like that there were times where I just had to stop and have a good cry. I felt like I need something light. I need something a little bit light. So I ended up reading the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, which was also made into a movie. I haven't watched it yet. And that was the balm I needed at that point. It was perfect. It was, even though, you know, it took place during Second World War, when not so nice stuff happened on the island of Guernsey, just the way it's told and the lightness with which it's told, it was just such a pleasure to listen to. I was often smiling on the bus. People probably knew I was listening to something enjoyable. And so it just brought the smile to my face that I needed, and the lightness, and I really, really enjoyed it. I have to say I found the ending a little disappointing. It wrapped up so quickly, and just suddenly, boom, 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 everything happened. But I still really enjoyed it, and if you're looking for something light, it's a great one. And that's everything I've read. That feels like a lot. Maybe not. I'm not the fastest listener, fastest reader. I just started Frederick Backman's A Man Called Ove, so I'll tell you more about that next time. And I think that just about brings this episode to an end, because I don't even know what to tell you. But it certainly is nice to be able to catch up again and share a little bit of my knitting, because it feels like there's been quite a bit. And I hope that I'll be able to get back into a regular schedule. of podcasting again about every 3 weeks, because that was about 2 months, and see you more this fall. So that concludes the episode for today, friends. I hope this has found you well, and that the last couple of months have been good to you, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.